Okay. Hello, I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Poffo Ortiz. And today's been a little bit of a weird day because we didn't have much action on Skype for our usual podcasts. And so Poffo and were on there talking, and we wanted to do like an earth-centered spirituality type hangout and talk about the religious experience. And I'm not entirely sure what all this is about. But I'm sure Poffo can clarify, and I'll ask questions. Um, yeah, but basically, you were talking about how like there's a transcendent experience, like something moves you with music or something like that, and I don't know. I mean, I tend to not like to describe these experiences as religious necessarily, but there is something that religions have where they incorporate this emotional, what do you call it? I call it emotional manipulation because it's used in brainwashing. You know, I have a very negative view of these kinds of things.
Maybe we can let's work on that. Maybe we can help change your perspective a little bit. Um, no, we don't have to call it religious at all. Actually, what I'm trying to do and what I represent is taking back that terminology and taking back that concept that it has to be through belief in a supernatural realm or belief in gods and deities, gods and angels and demons. Like that's not necessary for someone to have a religious experience. A religious experience could be something as simple and mundane as, you know, standing in front of a waterfall and literally the water is cascading on you and you just look around and you're just surrounded by this awe-inspiring view of the geological formation of like of a rock quarry, you know. And I'm literally describing the last time I was in Portland. This is what I experienced behind Multnomah Falls, and it was incredible. And I felt like I was being baptized, you know. But I was being baptized by the rain and the water and the earth. It started to rain, and it was incredible. It was beautiful. These moments, many times, they can come through music. They can come through film, through art. You know, any form of sort of creative expression where someone else really tunes in to their to whatever it is that moves and inspires them, and they can inspire and motivate other people because there's like a universal aspect to this where we can relate, you know, whether it's the lyrics in a song or the themes in a movie. We've talked many times about Lord of the Rings and fantasy films and stuff like that, and you know, the things that move us most, and it could it actually it could be anything. We don't have to kind of pigeonhole it into a certain thing that, oh, it's got to be like new agey music, or it's just this, or it's just that. No, the human experience is so diverse and so multifaceted, you know, that literally it can happen through any medium, as many experiences as there are in life. There can be that many opportunities for inspiration. And so what I really would like to explore, and this is a kind of a cool thing because you're saying you're not really familiar with it. I mean, you can ask me questions and I can explain it to you how this works. Like when you're religious, this is the difference. You talked about the manipulation stuff. When you're religious, every time those things happen, well, okay, let me back up. First of all, you're more inclined to have these experiences when you're kind of institutionalized in religion, when you have these concepts, these spiritual concepts that are all transcendent, they're all beyond, they're all ultra ideal, you know, concepts that are they're so far beyond when it comes to purity and righteousness and goodness and a heavenly realm or divine beings that are protecting you or are tempting you. Either way, they're the ultimate extremes. Now, when you have these religious experiences, when you're religious, obviously you attribute them to the forces and powers that are existent within those belief systems. Now, what I'm talking about, I'm saying that those experiences are real. They're just misdirected, or they just end up being projections of your belief system. What I'm saying is that atheists and agnostics and religious naturalists and pantheists can have the exact same kinds of transformative, transcendent experiences through their interaction with the natural world, through their everyday life experiences, we can actually cultivate um, this kind of awareness. It's like a heightened awareness. If you were to ask me what my definition of spirituality is, I would say it's a heightened awareness of the beauty and complexity and wonder of reality, of the natural world. So when we experience things like synchronicity and inspiration, or we're moved to tears, or we're motivated and inspired by a sunset, or something that's completely naturalistic, religious people attribute it to God, and they say, God spoke to me and it was so wonderful, and I saw his love and his mercy in the sunset, and this event happened, this circumstance happened, and it made me realize I know God's watching over me, and I know God saved me from this, and I know God's protecting me, and I know that this was his angels, and I know that he's answering my prayer. Well, we know, you and I know, that that's all bullshit, that none of that world doesn't exist. So what's actually happening in the mind and heart of the individual, of the person that's experiencing this? And I say what's happening is they're tapping into their highest ideals. So imagine if people who aren't traditionally religious in a conventional sense could tap in to their highest ideals, to their greatest, their higher selves, so to speak, like, and actually allow that to motivate them to a higher level of morality, to ethics and morals and values, to being a better person. Like when we see movies, when we talked about comic book heroes, superheroes, and we see movies and stuff, we get inspired, and we see Aragorn, fighting the orcs, and we whatever it is, whatever fantasy film or whatever medium or modus operatum that we relate to most becomes that source. So there's a lot more I could say, but I don't want to ramble on.
Well,
So
you
you
mentioned
follow me?
synchronicity. What's
Sure.
synchronicity?
The synchronicity is something that is like beyond a coincidence. It's more than just a happenstance. It could either be your mind creating like a correlation that's really not there because you're kind of like looking for it or you're open to it, or it literally, on a certain level, and I'll explain this, it is the universe speaking to you. It's the universe literally giving you the messages that you need, or it has a lot to do with timing, when certain things happen at just the right time, when you were thinking a thought, when you were imagining something, when you walked across the street, and just the perfect timing, something happened that spoke a message to you that was so deep and profound. It was like, whoa, it's like the religious person would say, God just spoke to me. Like, I just received a message. This was beyond a coincidence. And we would say it's the universe, it's nature speaking to us. Now, we know that nature is not a conscious being. It's not a cohesive conscious entity. But what nature is the culmination of all things, right? And since you are part of nature, perceiving the external world, the deepest, sort of highest, most ideal parts of you are actually speaking to you through the external world. So kind of like reading tarot cards, kind of like a Ouija board, or reading tea leaves, or staring into a crystal ball, or divination. It dabbles into the occult and stuff. Like, it's this concept that literally you're getting messages from the other side. Well, what you're really getting messages from is yourself, and so it's your own ideals, your own unconscious mind is speaking to you, and it's using the external world, it's using the events around you that happen to give you a really powerful message that's so personal and so unique to your situation. So, I mean, that's a really long explanation, but that's a lot of the essence of what synchronicity is. When it happens, it literally feels like the universe is conspiring to speak to you.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time grasping onto this because I would need an actual example of an experience that I have had,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to explain this through that lens.
You might be having them all the time, but you might not be perceiving them. You might be interpreting them in a different way. When things happen, you're like, wow, that was really weird. I can't believe that happened. That was like perfect. Things just worked out perfectly. And see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Now, okay. Now here's an idea. Now, this isn't really so much of an experience that I've had, But Monique, for example, on the podcast I've done with her, she shared this thing of how she went vegetarian even before she learned, became vegan later on, about how she was just in her apartment and had this like psychic experience or something weird revealing to her that she was an animal and the cows were an animal and she has, obviously she has what she would call a spiritual or religious experience.
Right.
She clearly has those things all the time, and she tells me her stories and I've never known what to think about it.
Right.
But that's the thing, is that with me, all of my experiences, well, they make sense, unlike the experiences I hear from other people.
No, see, the problem is, remember that okay, like what she was describing, a psychic experience. She said a psychic experience, and you would call it a religious experience, like a transformative sort of, she's tapping into something, or something is speaking to her, basically, and it's giving her a message, and it's something that's life changing. It's something that really motivates and inspires you, and it's emotional, and it's powerful. It's very poignant. That's the idea. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And when we get into like intuition, psychic phenomena, and stuff like that, those are extensions of this. This is, first of all, let's get it straight. It's all us. There's no outside forces. There's no gods or demons or devils. There's no spirit guides. There's no disembodied. I mean, people would disagree. They would argue with this, but in my ontology, in my worldview, it's all us, and that's how powerful the human mind is. The human mind is so incredibly multi-layered, multifaceted, and powerful, that it actually creates these experiences when it's what you need. So that's what she needed, and that's where her heart was pulling her in that direction. And so she had like a revelation, like that she was an animal, that they're all animals, and we're all animals, and that literally, like, organic life, living biological entities deserve love and respect and compassion. And so many people experience this through drugs, through hallucinogenic experiences, through LSD, magic mushrooms. Me and Peter, we've talked about this endlessly. He wants to promote the use of entheogens in order to facilitate these experiences. I say that's dangerous, because people are already not stable. They're not ready for it on that level. They're already hurting. They're already seeking escape, and they're already confused. So this is for a select few. I'm positing. I'm trying to promote the idea that we can experience this sober. That we can actually experience this through our own senses, through using our intellect, using our mind, using mediums like art and poetry and music and the natural world. So what Monique had was a real experience. And it was exactly what she needed. You see what I'm saying? But it had nothing to do with God. But on another level, it had everything to do with God, because God is nature. God is everything. Nature in her, through her, and through her environment, spoke to her and gave her exactly what she needed, so to speak. You follow me?
Well, yeah. It's just so weird, though, because people have these experiences where that seems like they received some revelation that changes their whole life, and yet it's this. What I don't like about it is it's non-transferable, because you can't just make somebody else have that experience. And so
Right.
while, like, sure, it's great that Monique had this experience that turned her into this vegan, through her experiences, but I'm like, that's not the way it happened for me, and probably not the way it's going to happen for most people. And so I'm not so sure how valuable it is for the public. There may be like a few people who have these experiences where they get a message from the universe, which is really themselves, as you were pointing out. But I don't really know. I
understand, Chandler. What you're saying is you want some kind of a quantifiable way to sort of mass market it and reproduce it.
Exactly.
You want to be able to
mass market it. And here's the deal, man. I would have to say, if people having hallucinogenic mushrooms turned them all vegan, I would be mass marketing that too, if it had that effect on everybody,
It won't. It won't, because it'll affect you based on where you're already at. You know what I mean? It'll tune
Right.
into, and this is something I want to say. Um, you can't mass market it, or you can't reproduce it. Um, kind of like putting it out like a product, or you would say transferable. It's non-transferable because it's subjective. It's entirely personal and subjective to you. So whereas you might get the deepest messages from My Little Pony, I might think it's just a stupid cartoon that doesn't make any.
Which is how it usually plays out,
Right.
because I
But
do.
but yet, hold on. But see, as someone else walks into a giant cathedral and they just feel the glory of God, and they feel, because it's so big and it's so impressive and epic, and they feel this sense of holiness and reverence and awe. I literally like go out into a forest and I see these magnificent trees. I see the redwoods, and I'm looking in the Olympic National Forest, and I'm like, these incredible trees that have been here for hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years, and they're so ancient and old, and there's a sense of something holy and sacred there. See how it's completely subjective. So whatever your own idea, however it speaks to you, that's the most powerful way. Where I get messages from like horror movies. I love horror films, and I get like these powerful, incredibly deep messages through that, where someone else would be appalled and they'd be totally grossed out and think it's evil, okay, where it's not evil to me. So what we're talking about is how it's literally um, very, very, very personalized. It's a personalized experience that's relevant to you, and that's what makes it so powerful. That's why it can't be sort of mass produced, but it can be cultivated. It can be what's the word? Like, we can create conditions in order to allow this to happen if people are seeking it. I mean, we're talking about is seeking enlightenment, and transcendence. And so, like I always say, we know there's no transcendent realm, but we can have a transcendent experience, because there are sort of listen to me very carefully. There are higher dimensions of consciousness. There are higher dimensions of experience and perception that we're not privy to, that we don't have access to. And that just means because we're little organisms on this little planet, and the universe is so gigantic and big. So there are forces and powers in nature that are constantly at work, pushing and pulling, and there's this flux. And sometimes we tune into that, whether it's maybe through the seasons, through the weather, through our own biological systems. You follow me? So
Yeah,
in
but
that
I want
sense,
to go.
there.
I want to go back
Yeah.
to. Okay, see, here's the problem: the fact that these experiences are non-transferable and can't be mass marketed and reproduced is precisely why they seem to have such little value to me. Because, like, for example, Poffo, the value of science and the scientific method is that experiments can be repeated, same conditions, same experiment, they get the same result, cause and effect, very predictable and reliable. And so that's just
Absolutely.
it. That reliability is what draws so many people to a scientific approach that
Hmm.
rejects all subjectivity and wants only objective truth. So how in the
So
world
let's
do we merge this?
let's explore this. First of all, okay, how do okay, let me just answer that. Let me just answer that first. We raise every child learning about microbiology and cosmology and space and physics and astronomy and science. We teach every kid the beauty and the wonder and the glory of nature. Okay, give every kid a microscope and a telescope, and don't indoctrinate him with any Bronze Age, Iron Age myths. Okay, and he'll end up being a pantheist. That's how you create it. If you want to create this, okay, literally teach science. Teach reality. Teach the miraculous inner workings of the human mind, of the brain, of what goes on, the neurological processes. Or teach psychology, teach philosophy, teach an earth-centered worldview, okay, that doesn't draw its value, and it doesn't have its emphasis and its importance on just the mystical experience, or on things that are a kingdom come, a world that's beyond, or an afterlife, or even so much into the past, where things that are not really applicable to everyday life, that things that aren't really relatable. Like, let's get away from all that and let's just focus on what's beautiful and what's true and what's virtuous and what's good and what brings joy and what brings peace and fulfillment, in this real world, in this everyday life, in the tangible physical reality. And that would be a huge start, a huge um, a jump start and an improvement on where it is right now. Because what it is right now, there's all kinds of myths and fantasy and cultural traditions, and a lot of emotionalism, a lot of emotional experience. And this is a very fine line, because what I'm talking about is an emotional experience, okay? But we cannot base it all on emotion. There needs to be a logical understanding of it. And here's where me and Peter would disagree. He says there's value to the irrational and the illogical. And I'm saying, if you can't draw a sort of a cognizant, a practical, intellectual benefit from it, like a takeaway, then it's useless. So you can have a powerful emotional experience, and then you go right back to your everyday life and nothing changes. So it's got to make sense. You can have a really amazing dream that gives you all the answers to the universe and the cosmos, okay? But if you don't know what the hell it meant, if you can't interpret it, it's pointless. It's useless. So there's got to be the balance there between the abstract and the logical. And you see what I'm saying? With the emotional and the rational, it needs to be both.
Yeah, like, okay, here's another thing. Like, we talked about dreams in the last hangout that you and Peter and I did. Like, of course, I talked about the light bulb dream and stuff. But so here's the deal.
I love that, by the way. I would love to interpret that for you, by the way.
Oh, I know. Well, see, here's the deal. I wanted to talk about interpretation of dreams because, okay, I was part of this really weird Pentecostal church, okay, and that was the last one I left, and that was when I quit Christianity entirely, because it was.
Yeah.
It was really freaky. But see, okay, so there was this pastor's wife. She thought she could interpret everyone's dreams. So people were telling her their dreams, and she would interpret it. And of course, they would accept her interpretation as being absolute true and from God. And first of all, my logical mind, even though I was heavily indoctrinated, I'm like, wait a minute, why wouldn't God? Because I believed in God back then. Just tell the person that, rather than giving them a confused symbolic dream so that they have to talk to this lady so that she can tell them what God wanted to tell them through the dream. And I thought of that. I'm like, I knew it was bullshit. But just for the fun of it, Poffo, I've never told anyone this story, so this is going to be hilarious. But, okay, so I had these recurring dreams when I was about 23, 24, where I was pregnant. I was a woman and I was pregnant, okay? And it's really, really strange, because who knows what sort of way somebody can try to interpret that. So I tried to ask this pastor's wife, and of course we called her Pastor Lori. It's kind of a weird thing. Everybody was a pastor. But okay, so then she told me that God was birthing something in me. Like,
well, I mean, how original? Like it doesn't take a lot of thought to come up with that.
Yeah, I'm like, how vague. But of course, I knew better than to trust that lady anyway. I already knew that the system was bullshit from what I just told you, how it made absolutely no sense. But now, however, since we're going to talk about experiences, what would happen if a person, upon examination of their dreams, figures out what their self was speaking to them and figures out what the dream did mean? Not from, like you said, not from some weird other realm of other beings, but from the self, those emotions, what did it mean?
Hey, hold on, Chandler. I want to answer you, and there's a lot of I got in my head I want to say, but
okay.
You're starting to freeze up. I don't know if the recording's going to be like that, but you're kind of freezing, and the audio's cutting out. So
yeah,
it's okay now, but a little while ago it was messed up.
Yeah, just like 10 minutes ago or so, whatever. It actually froze both our video. I could see on my screen where it's frozen. So hopefully it won't do it very often. Right now it looks fine. But yeah, anyway, I want to hear your response to what I was just saying there.
Okay, well, first of all, with the woman, Okay, obviously, when it comes to the religious, there is this idea that she may very well understand like symbolism, and she may very well have been able to sort of interpret on a certain level, but the real interpretation, the true interpretation, only you will know, because it has more to do with not so much the visual manifestations of what you're actually seeing in your dream, but what you felt when you were experiencing it, like what those sort of objects and themes and events mean to you. That's how you interpret dreams. So to an outsider, from an external perspective, they can have a completely different sort of attitude about something that you're talking about that's in your dream, and so they'll interpret it wrong. But there's a real easy way to do it. Is you just ask the person, well, what does that mean to you? Well, how does that make you feel? Well, what does this symbol or this, what does this represent in your life, or how have you felt about snakes or light bulbs or unicorns, whatever it might be, and because it's your unconscious, it's your subconscious mind that that we're exploring here. So like there is a way that you can very easily interpret dreams, and it just has more to do with understanding the person's own individual feelings toward that subject matter. And so, yeah, I can understand. And this is another thing I want to say. I really do appreciate your skepticism. Skepticism is absolutely necessary and important, especially like in my philosophy. You've got to have a balance of skepticism and imagination, and understanding that we should question things, and we should not believe anything on blind faith. And absolutely, we shouldn't just um, blindly conform and follow authority. So I applaud you for that skepticism, but at the same time, listen to what I'm saying and see if you can understand the subtle nuances of it. Okay, um, dreams do have significance. They do have meaning, because it's you. It's literally your own mind that's speaking to you using visuals and sort of your creative, imaginative um, uh, constructs that are very active when you're asleep. The parts of your brain that deal with logic and common sense and reason and even morality are all shut down while you're sleeping. They're asleep. They're out. And the parts that are firing the most are like the right brain, the amygdala, that deals with memory, imagination. So I have incredible dreams all the time about memories, and they're emotional, but a lot of them don't make any logical sense, because in the translation of it, you get hung up and you're thinking about the specifics, and that's not what it's about. Remember what you felt in the dream. Remember what those things meant to you in the dream, or what they mean to you in life. Don't get hung up on the abstraction of it, because that's what it is. It's abstract language, so to speak. So if you can understand the language of symbolism and metaphor and allegory, and think in terms of abstraction, then it's very easy to interpret dreams.
Yeah, see, here's the thing about it is, now, of course, as a determinist, one of my approaches is, well, what would have caused that dream? Because obviously I know things don't just happen for no reason.
Right.
There had to have been some
Sure.
experience in the past, or some desire for something that would have led to whatever part of the brain was active to generate a dream like that.
There's two things. I mean, it could be whatever's going on in your life at the time. What you're going through, what you're feeling, you have anxiety. I think I had a dream last night that I ate pork. That I came in and I smelled something cooking. And I just started eating it, and then in the dream I said, "Wait a minute, this is pork. I I don't want to. I don't want to do this." Like, so you don't. There's no logic to it. But actually, what the dream had more to do was the nostalgia. I was in my old house where I grew up, and somebody was cooking something, and so you see what I mean? Like it. Remember, there's two things. The dream could have to do with what's going on in your life, so it's speaking a message to you, or it could literally just be you're asleep, and so whatever unconscious thought like comes into your mind, then the abstract mind just runs with it. It just rolls with it. So you could think of a box, you can think of a car, and then all of a sudden you're in a car and you're driving somewhere. You see what I'm saying? But in the narrative of the dream, like the story of the dream, and some people have very elaborate, powerful. I have cinematic dreams all the time with like background, like theme music, and I wake up exactly at the climax. It's crazy. Like I have these incredible dreams that are like films that I would love to make into movies. the storyline and the narrative, that's where you get the real messages from. Like, don't get hung up so much sort of on the the props and the externals, because that's all it is. It's like a play that's teaching a moral, that's teaching a moral lesson, so to speak. So let's what I was gonna say. Did you have something else you want to add, or what?
Yeah, well, see, it's very interesting because I really think there's got to, yeah, yeah, this whole thing about knowing what it means to you because it came from your brain, the
Hmm.
dream or whatever the experience you had. So one thing, I guess, a good piece of advice for people is to not just go looking for some person having them
Yeah.
tell you what your dream
Right.
meant, because it's not their dream, and it's like
Exactly.
only you know it. So that's an
Learn the
important thing.
language of symbols. Learn the language of symbols yourself. Learn to understand the language of metaphor and allegory. And that's why like mythology is so important. And if we could take all the religions of the world and we could just say it's all mythology, it's all stories. Now get what you want to get from those stories, and that's it. Stop taking it literally. Stop condemning other people. Stop hating and criticizing and literally going to war for these things that are just stories. It's mythology. Those myths have power. They have an enduring universal power to them. Otherwise, they would not still exist. I'm all about understanding mythology, the deeper meanings behind it, but I don't believe any of it. I don't take any of it literally as if it actually happened. I mean, it's history mixed in with mythology, a lot of legend, folklore, a lot of exaggeration. It's basically what religions are based on, is these holy books that are just a lot of mythology that have been literalized and personified metaphors and personified ideals and sort of cultural motifs that have been glorified and taken literally. So let's throw away the literalism, which is what leads to fundamentalism. Throw that away and let's embrace those cultural myths and stuff and try to get what we can, the messages from them. Like, what does the Christ myth represent? Like the highest ideal of humanity, of compassion and forgiveness and sacrificing yourself for others. And a lot of it was all tied in with like solar worship and astrology and of course the Jewish expectation of a Messiah and all that stuff. So anyway, but it gave credence to that sect, that cult of Judaism, which then became to dominate the whole world because it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. So the point is, there's truth in it, but none of it is actually true. So like that's the way you have to look at it. So I would say the same thing. So if I have a mystical experience, if I have like a transcendent experience, it's not necessarily like I can't take it literally. I have to draw the message from it and see what it is that my own mind, my own higher self is trying to tell me. And I really want to get to this idea that there is this incredible, all-encompassing force or power. Okay, I call it the life principle, the omnia, that is responsible for everything, and it is everything, and it embodies everything, and it is embedded in everything. It permeates everything. And what we're literally talking about is the natural world, nature itself, Mother Nature. We need to recognize that this is what should be considered divine, not an invisible, imaginary man in the sky, not whatever it is that mainstream religions tell you, but Mother Nature itself. The earth is our home. We belong here. We're a part of nature. We need to care for the earth. We need to view all life as sacred. If we did that, the world would change. The world would change in a matter of months or years if we all adopted this philosophy. Of course, you can't adopt a philosophy if you don't literally believe in it. So I say, teach science, teach biology, teach cosmology. When you look at photos of the Hubble telescope and you see these incredible gas clouds and nebulae and collapsing stars and planets and comets and asteroids, like it moves you. When you look at the vastness of the cosmos, you experience the grandeur and the mystery of what's out there. What the hell is out there? That's all real, man. That's not fairy tale. That's not fantasy. That's real. And then you could zoom back in on the micro level and study your own body and study, like, the entire universe that's like in, like in a forest, like in an ecosystem, and everything, all the interconnected parts, and how everything's interrelated, and the way everything fits together, and the way everything has adapted and evolved, and how extraordinary the plant life and the animal kingdom is. I mean, that's miraculous. That's where the focus should be, and that's what pantheism is all about: is redirecting the focus onto where it should be, to the natural world, to our existence, to the earthly realm, so to speak.
Yeah, see,
Which to
that's
me,
the thing
it
is,
is magical. It's
yes,
magical.
see, I agree with all that, because here's what it comes down to: is there are people who care more about debating about completely unseeable things, unknowable things,
Hmm.
and like here's what I'm going to say, and this I'm going to compare Jesus to My Little Pony, okay? And this is going to offend so many people, Poffo, but that makes this broadcast great, okay? So
Don't offend me. It's funny.
for me personally, it doesn't matter whether or not a man named Jesus existed any more than it matters whether Twilight Sparkle or Princess Celestia existed, because there's a story there, and what morals you get from that story, like you were saying, it's true, but it's not literally true. It's not like this really happened with these horses. And similarly,
Hmm.
I don't believe all those stories in the Bible happen, but there's still messages to get out of there. Like you said, that there's
Sure.
some good stuff, and even some stuff I got out of it that I still agree with to this day. And it's almost like people, they aren't able to separate the,
Right.
yeah, like, because yeah, there's a difference between literal truth of something actually happening, or the meaning of it. So yeah.
But I'm saying let's make our own stories. I'm saying let's write our own stories. Let's be the main character in our own incredible novel. I'm saying that, like, instead of going backwards and looking to these ancient stories and these ancient archaic myths, and that are completely entrenched and surrounded with superstition, and where the focus is on all the wrong things. Let's reinvent the sacred myth, and let's the hero's journey is a powerful, it's a powerful archetype. Let's tap into that, and be inspired by whatever inspires us, whatever happens to inspire us. If for you it's My Little Pony, if it's for me, it's a walk in the mountains. It could be for someone else. It's a passionate, romantic love affair, and you know, literally finding their everything in another person. Which, I mean, that's kind of it's a dangerous thing to do. It can end badly many times, but many people, they find their fulfillment, in falling in love, and that's an incredible aspect of life. So whatever it might be, that moves and inspires you and leads you to be the best that you can be, and again, we have to teach the truth of reality. We have to teach that we are all biological organisms in an organismic system, that, literally everything is dependent on everything else, and teach that we're animals, teach our true origins, where we came from, teach evolution, teach science, like instill, like that sense of wonder and mystery. It's already in there in children have it, and we rob them of it. It gets stolen from them, it gets suppressed, it gets squashed out of them, it gets stripped away, because we have to be responsible, adults, and pay our bills, and we have to work, and we have to toil, and it's insane that, like, the best parts of humanity are in poetry and art and music and fantasy, and in storytelling, and in exploration. Like, literally the experience of novelty and learning new things, and hiking, and trying to spelunking, and going cave exploring, and things like that, and scuba diving, and there's so much wonder and beauty in this world, and yet we're fixated on imaginary worlds, and it's not necessarily always a bad thing, because the imaginary world can inspire you, as we've been saying, and
Yeah.
spark higher thoughts, but it's way too much. The preoccupation, with an imaginary world, that's only for people who are oppressed, and who are miserable, and who are dissatisfied with their lives, so they literally invent an alternate reality to escape to, and that's what religion becomes. And that's
Yeah.
not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about escaping. I'm talking about embracing the real world, and finding your balance and finding truth wherever it is, and it can happen through many of these mediums. But I would abstain from looking to religious systems for that, because that becomes about guilt and control and sort of domination, and it's even though they focus on ethics and morals and values, there's far too much fiction involved, and I'm all about the real world.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing because there has to be a mix of ethics and reality to a certain extent. And here's what I mean. Because if somebody knows all the facts, let's say that they know all the science there is, they know how everything works, but then they're just like this insane psychopath murderer, who just has no ethics and likes to torture people for fun, and all their knowledge of science didn't do them any good. And similarly, a person who has the best of intentions, the most kind and moral person ever, with a false concept of reality, not knowing how things work, will end up hurting those they intend to help.
Right, exactly. It's all about balance. It's all about having a proper, healthy emotional balance, about being emotionally stable, and literally understanding that emotion and the emotional experience and your own emotions are just as important as logic and reason and intellect, and they're just literally two sides of the same coin. They're just two parts of what make up who you are. The soul is the mind, the will, and the emotions. So you've got like the mind and the emotions there, and there needs to be that balance. We have no free will, as you have said a million times, but we do have a will, and that will, pushes us and drives us to be whatever we are, to pursue the things that we do, and to explore the things that we care about. And like Joseph Campbell, says, follow your bliss, follow whatever inspires you, follow what moves and motivates you. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what other people say, how stupid, the concept might be. Wherever you find truth, whatever makes you feel, whatever really makes you feel. And I don't mean like, a crumbling shell of sappy emotions. I mean, when I say feel, what makes you feel connected, what makes you feel like you're a part of something greater and larger and bigger than you are, because we are a part of something that's so vast and so incomprehensibly, gargantuan, just huge, this universe, just this earth alone. So whatever allows you to feel reality, to feel connected to the earth, to the world, to the universe, whatever helps you to stay grounded, to helps you focus, to helps you remain sort of calm and have that equanimity in times of crisis, and when horrible things are happening all around you, then stick with that. I mean, I'm literally talking about, this is spirituality. I'm literally talking about religion. This is what religion is, or what it could be, without all the dross, without all the falsities and the fairy tales.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. Yeah, now here's another thing that I think is important. All of our fantasies, in one sense or another, are based on some aspect of reality. And this is actually something my mom pointed out years ago, like and here's a good example. Notice that, say, games like Minecraft are basically a really blocky model of the real world. You've got the trees, you've got the sheep, you've got the cows, you got the grass, you've got the rivers, the oceans. It's all just nature. It's all just nature, except everything's a cube, And so video games are meant to look like the planet Earth for the most part.
mm-hmm.
And even like, say, Avatar, that famous movie Avatar that
yeah.
Well, notice how similar it really was to planet Earth. It was another planet, but it wasn't really that different.
It was like Planet Earth 2.0. Like, it was the ideal sort of fantasy, aesthetically, just this beautiful, with the bioluminescent, everything had, everything glowed, and everything was just ultra beautiful and colorful. And yeah, and that's probably what our planet looked like, say the Cretaceous period or the Triassic, back in the days when plants and animals were huge. It was gigantic, like life forms on the planet, and they literally had a different sort of atmosphere and stuff at the time, so they were able to grow.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
So
obviously, and the coded in that movie was sort of an environmentalism message, and I
totally.
saw that. But when you look at it, people are not able to go very far in how aliens look. For example, the way they have
Mhm.
aliens and other planets look, they have them always look very humanoid.
Yeah, it's
Why do they do that? Because
anthropomorphic.
they're
Yeah.
humans. Because they're
Why does
humans.
Yeah, why does everything have to be bipedal or anthropomorphic, have two eyes, two ears? They speak like we do, and yeah, sure. We can't even comprehend the life forms that are probably out there, just on the millions and billions of planets that are out there. We can't even comprehend it. So yeah, we're limited by our imaginations,
Right.
but
Yeah. And so I was
we're
trying to
also
make a
propelled
point
by.
though.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
okay. The point I was trying to make before you interrupted was basically that, yeah, first of all, yes, there are things out there that go beyond what we can imagine. But the very things that we imagine are based on the very things that we have already seen literally in reality. We've seen those things, so we make movies and cartoons and plays based on real events. So we can't just say something is just fantasy if it's a cause and effect relationship with reality becoming fantasy. That's my
That's a
point.
great point. Yeah, it's a great point. So think about it. So everything in fantasy, has a kernel of truth, has a level of reality to it. It's based on something, and we've just taken it further. So literally, I've heard these theories that, like, if you can imagine it, then it already exists somewhere. It exists already in some realm, in some dimension, on some planet. It already exists, and that's fascinating to me. Like, maybe it already existed in the past. Maybe it will exist in the future. But imagination is powerful, and it's a key thing to what we're talking about. Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, people should learn. They should educate themselves, and they should gravitate toward whatever it is that helps them to think and dream and experience the higher quality of life. So for many people, that could be raising children. They think that could be having babies, lots and lots of babies. They think that's what life's all about, and then they find out later on that it's not so. For me, it's exploration. For me, it's the creative process. So, like, individually, each person subjectively, should gravitate toward, not be so consumed with their obligations, their responsibilities, all these things, because we live. This is a construct. The society we live in, we've created. So if we want to create a different world, a different kind of society, we have to fundamentally think differently. We have to set higher standards for ourselves, have a higher ideal, and then we'll see the world start to shift and move in that direction. But we can't lose that ability, to think and ponder and dream and imagine. And so the creative arts, I think, are a huge part of that. We should never let go of that. Anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting thought because, I mean, I'm not like, yeah, as you know, I'm not really dismissive of these experiences, these fantasy things. Of course, everyone knows that I'm the dude who is really into unicorns, obviously. But yeah, if you can think it already exists somewhere, or has, or it will if it doesn't already, because yeah, it's like even our wildest fantasies and our dreams still follow some form of logic. There's still logic going on there. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be able to come up with a false interpretation of dreams. But there's something that makes sense, and I want it to all fit together very well, because I don't want us to all become like, so dry where we say, oh, let's not have art, let's not have music, let's not watch cartoons, and become one of those boring adults or something like that. That'd be sick.
Yeah, it's for creative artistic types, like it never happens because we long for that. We want there to we like there to be mystery and wonder, and we want there to be something that's sort of an alternative. And this is kind of the lure. This is the trap of religions. They promise an alternative reality. That will take away all your problems. That will help you and save you from all your troubles. Yes, but like what does exist are these transcendent experiences that can give you and the power, the willpower, the motivation to be able to learn from the painful experiences in life, to draw inspiration and learn those life lessons, so that it's not for nothing. Like we find our own purpose, we give ourselves purpose and meaning, and I say whatever purpose we choose for ourselves, that's our purpose. Because that's nature through us,
Yeah.
seeking the highest good. So it's not like there is an overall purpose. It's just like a blank canvas, so to speak, and we bring to the table whatever we do, like whatever you think is valuable and meaningful. Well, that's what's valuable and meaningful for you, and that's what motivates you in life. I think the purpose of life is experience itself, is education, knowledge, and the expansion of consciousness.
Yeah, the whole idea of a purpose or a meaning to the universe or whatever is very strange, because you have the religious side which tries to tell you, well, there is a purpose, whether you like it or not. God has a purpose for you, so you better obey, and
Right.
and so that's really mean in a sense. Like,
It's imposed on you. Yeah, it's imposed on you, and so many atheists and stuff, and they say, no, I don't want your purpose. I want, for people like me, it's difficult because I've come out of that, and there is this giant hole. There's this giant vacuum that's saying, okay, what now? Like, I get it. Life has no meaning. There's no God. So then, what do I do with my life? And honestly, it's like I have to continuously sort of straddle that line and reevaluate and reestablish, like who I am and what's really worth doing. Is it helping people? Is the vegan movement? Should I just become this like ultra super vegan activist? Or should I counsel people and try to be a therapist with my knowledge in psychology and depression and anxiety with my experience with all that? Like, is that what I'm supposed to do? I want to do what makes me happy, what is the most fulfilling, and literally what will bring the most good to this planet.
yeah,
So,
well, yeah,
you know,
there's a point I'd like to make, though, and this is a little bit deep and may completely blow your mind, Poffo. But
blow
here's
my
the
mind.
deal. Yeah, okay, so I already pointed out the problem of religions imposing this particular purpose that they say that you have, even though you're not satisfied with it, you don't want to do it. And yet at the same time, you've got people who are sort of nihilists as far as meaning, and they're like, oh, nothing really means anything, and do
Right.
whatever you want because it doesn't matter. But I think there's actually something going on here, and understand this from the perspective that we do not choose that purpose for ourselves, given that we do not have free will, and that the person we are, who we become, is caused by our will and our motivation, which we did not choose, and we become more and more of the person we are. So in a sense, we are like a play or a movie. Our life is like that, and there is a destiny. In a sense, it is predestined, and you just don't know what it is yet till it happens. And I think there's
you're
a
yeah,
beautiful way of
you're an
looking.
actor. Yeah, you're an actor in the play, playing the part, so to speak. I mean, if you want to get really deep and if you want to go down the rabbit hole, we are all God, and we've just forgotten who we are. And so we're acting out the part of being a human, the part of being a cat, the part of being a table, a chair, a rock, a mountain, a forest, a moon. We're all these differentiated, scattered aspects of nature that are like playing the part for the experience of it, but each one doesn't know, what the other is doing, and is just literally like enjoying, absorbing, the experience of life, the experience of existence itself.
That gave me a thought, Poffo. Like
Yeah.
a person who has amnesia, for example, and they forget who they are, and so then they have to find out who they are, and it's like what you said about how like we are God, but we've forgotten who we are. It reminded me of this movie I saw with starring Jim Carrey called The Magnificent, and it was
Yeah.
actually really good. We checked it out from the library, and where this guy he loses his memory in a car accident, and then he wakes up near this town where he apparently looks like some guy that they thought was dead in a war, and so they mistake this guy for them, and he believes them because he doesn't know who he is, so he
Yeah.
ends up improving the lives of everyone in the town, and everything goes wonderful, and eventually he finds out who he is, and initially they're devastated, but overall it all turned out for the better. But just thinking about how it's like we are under temporary amnesia, and forgotten who we are, but once we realize that we are the universe and how connected we are, it's like we've discovered our true self in a sense.
Well, it's awesome. It reminds me of Regarding Henry, an old movie with Harrison Ford, where same thing. He gets amnesia. He was kind of a jerk. He was like this. He was like this really rude guy that was very materialistic, and then he gets in. I don't forget if it was a car accident or what, but he loses memory, and then he literally becomes a different person. He actually becomes a good father. He actually becomes a good husband, and he actually, because it was wiped clean, he now has the opportunity to be whoever he wants to be. Total Recall is the same way, the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, you have the opportunity to start over and be whatever you choose to be. Like, we're not, the future. I mean, this gets deep. The future is not set from our perspective.
Right.
Like, we're making it up as we go along. But at the same time, if you really want to get technical, I believe time already exists. Like, all things just are what they are. Past,
Yeah.
present, and future. We're kind of going along, experiencing it as we go along. We only live, 70 to 80 years, and then we die. So we can't see the future, and we can't see all the way back into the past. So we have this limit, this limitation. But yet, everything that I believe exists is existing right now at all times. There's just one thing. There's just one.
That sounds like the
thing.
block theory of the universe that Michael Walsh, my other co-host from the other show, was promoting in one of the older episodes. They had a huge debate about that.
This is irrelevant to us though, because we can't see the future, and like, we can learn from the past. We can keep a record of the past. We can look back into the past, looking in outer space when we see the remnants of the Big Bang. But
something you said reminded me of something. That movie Henry you mentioned. Now, my mom had mentioned it. She's seen it, and I haven't seen it, and I haven't been able to find it, but I want to see that someday. But here's the deal. The thought that he was given a fresh start when he lost his memory, he actually became a better person than he had been previously, which in a way is good, because think about it. I
know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I think you may already know what. Yeah, you may already know where I'm going with this, because there is not a persistent, enduring self that just exists for eternity, and because there is a cycle of death and rebirth because of the way things die, but new things are born. But it's the same matter, the same life. The substance, continually renewing itself, and in that sense, it's allowed to purify itself, just as the water evaporates. It's all muddy and has yuck stuff, but the water evaporates and is separated from the yuck, and then it rains down clean again. So in a way, we can get a positive message out of that the destruction of a person upon death, even though it's sad, but at the same time, it's a new beginning. It's a way to find a positive meaning in that.
Chandler, you sound just like a pantheist.
Been around you too long, Poffo.
This is it, man. You're talking like a pantheist. You're talking like a biopan. You're talking about the natural cycles of precipitation and the cycles of life and death, and the regeneration and rebirth and renewal, and a form of reincarnation. You're speaking about nature, and you're drawing deep philosophical insight from it. That's exactly what a pantheist does.
But yeah, and
I'm
see,
with you.
I would much rather talk about this than talking about how bad Trump is, like my other co-hosts want to do. And so, if they did get on Skype and don't see me, maybe they will be pissed. I don't know. But really, you and I
Hey,
wanted
man,
to talk about this. You know, this is
Chandler,
serious.
make it your own, man. This is your life. You know what I'm saying? You could be dead tomorrow, and you don't want to regret anything. You don't want to regret. You don't want to live with regrets, man. Like, we got one shot this life. You know, we got to be and do and say everything that we feel and everything. You know, be everything that we can be. Be all that you can be.
You know, there's an acronym for that.
What's
YOLO.
that?
YOLO.
Oh
You
yeah,
only live once.
I, I don't care. I don't care for
Yeah.
urban hip
Yeah,
hop
see,
culture.
and lately I've been working more on, not being so concerned with people getting upset and offended, and setting those boundaries with people, because I
Sure.
realize a lot of times people drag me into doing what I don't even want to do.
You should never do what you don't want
And
to do, man. It's your life.
yeah,
It's your show. It's your life. And yeah. I mean, if I could give you advice, I'd say just be a little more assertive and stand up for yourself. You know, speak your mind. Tell the
yeah. See,
truth.
I've actually been talking with my counselor about that, because that's the one thing that I really have a weakness in, is that it's hard for me to speak and say, well, no, I want to do this. Well, usually what happens is other people pressure me into doing what they want to do. But there comes a time when I realize, wait a minute, I'm not at Hy-Vee doing my job. I'm not getting paid to talk to people on Skype. So I might as well talk about what I want to do. And I've been looking at it almost too much as a duty, something I have to do, whether I
Right.
like it or not, versus something I want to do. And it should be fun. And
Absolutely.
honestly, yeah, so I agree,
Absolutely.
Poffo. I need to do more of this where I talk about what I'm really interested in, you know?
Man, like it goes right back to everything I was saying. Do what makes you happy. Do what brings you life. Do what brings you joy. You know, like really, man, like try and just suck the marrow out of life, because it's there, man. It's for us. We are citizens of planet Earth. Okay, we're denizens of this cosmos. Like, we belong here, and literally we have a right to be here. Okay, and we should enjoy everything that we can. We should literally pursue our greatest passions, like at all times. I mean, I realize everything I'm saying, it sounds so idealistic, and it may be unrealistic for some people. But let me ask you a question. What else in life is worth doing? What else in life would you rather do? What else in life is more important? Like, why would you let other people dictate, you know, how you choose to live your life, man? That's slavery. And
Yeah.
I'm far too I don't know, anarchistic, I guess, to submit to that.
Well, and
Um,
so am I. See, that's the thing about it. And Poffo, I have strangely mixed emotions about some things, because, like, on one hand I'm like, well, people ought to live their life and do what they want, but at the same time I'm also an advocate of not letting people do things that harm others. And of
of
course,
course,
so
of course.
so the reality of it is, if I was the dictator of the country, and I would ban all animal slaughter immediately, and all sorts of stuff, and just,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. We've talked about it. We've talked about it before, man. I mean, if I ruled the world, eliminate the ability to reproduce, eliminate
yeah.
religion, and get rid of money. Money, religion, and having children has literally caused all the problems in the world. And in its place, institute an earth-based, naturalistic form of spirituality that sees all of nature, all of biological life as sacred and divine. You cultivate and instill that and educate people in the sciences. I mean, you'll see a revolution, man. You'll change the world.
And
That's
you
what
know
we're trying to
something,
do.
Poffo?
Yeah.
I agree with those things, those three things you just mentioned, yet highly. But there's something else I want to point out. Notice that a lot of people, because the Christians who believe in an afterlife, they believe that things are all going to be idealistic and perfect somehow, and people will be sinless, and there will be no suffering in
I'm
heaven.
so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up. Go ahead. This is
Yeah,
something
yeah.
about
My
me
point
and
is,
Peter talked about. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. My point that I'm trying to make with that is they are basically believing that God is going to act as a benevolent dictator to force everybody to be good and kind. That's what they believe God will do someday. And so if that's what they want, then why do they have a problem with the idea of being dictated to do the right thing, from a legal perspective? Because it seems hypocritical to want everybody to be forced good in an afterlife and to desire that, but at the same time to be so, what's the word for this? To be so pro-choice, if you will, where they think everybody should do whatever they want, even if it hurts others. That is, I think there's an inconsistency. You take one or the other. Either you go full-blown anarchist where there's not even morality anymore and everyone does whatever they want, or you have some type of thing where people are, to a certain extent, forced to be good. Because that's what we want, a paradise. That's what I want. And they act as if the freedom to be evil is somehow desirable.
People value their freedom. People deeply hold on to their liberty. Okay, but the truth is they're all slaves. They're slaves to something else. But I mean, it is a good quality and aspect of human nature that we seek to be free, that we seek to not be ruled and controlled and enslaved by authoritarian power. Okay, if we want to make the world a better place, if we want to create that ideal, that paradise, that heaven, because we know that it's not going to come down from heaven, we know that it's not going to happen in the afterlife, we need to create it ourselves. We need to take responsibility. And what Christianity and all the Abrahamic faiths, what they do is they say, oh, I leave it up to God. It's not up to me, it's up to God. Let God judge. Everything is in God's hands. I trust God. Well, in a way, great. That's a nice placebo, and it gives you, the warm fuzzies, and you could feel like everything's going to work out in the end. Okay, but nothing's going to work out in the end unless we make it work out, unless we take responsibility as stewards of the earth, as responsible citizens, as earthlings, okay, and view ourselves as the caretakers and the keepers of morality on planet Earth. We are the morality of God on planet Earth. We are the voice of nature saying this is wrong, suffering is wrong, killing and slaughtering animals is wrong. Hatred and violence and envy and jealousy and cruelty and all these things, we recognize that. Like, that's nature in us that's grown and developed and evolved to that point. So we need to take responsibility for it. The other night, on Thanksgiving, you and Peter, we touched on it, that there is no heaven and hell, and yet there is, because this earth can be a heaven or a hell. And if you want to live in heaven, you have to create it yourself. And if you're afraid of hell, then stop allowing, other people, the people in positions of power and authority, to create hell on earth. Hell is separation from nature. Hell is separation from your own nature. Hell is chaos and destruction and cruelty and violence. And that's what exists, like, all over the planet. And this earth, this world, if you strip it of all its natural resources, if we continue to war and kill each other, if we continue to fight and mutilate each other, and I mean even psychologically, I mean through cyberbullying and through just violence in everyday life, being cruel and disrespectful and unkind, like, you're creating hell on earth. So there's no heaven unless we create it, and it's here on this planet. This is the only chance we got. We have to work together, man. Sustainability, permaculture, a pantheistic ideal.
Man. Yeah, because that's just it. Traditional religion has basically given people the idea, oh, well, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to work at all because, oh, God will fix it someday. Whereas what we're saying is exactly the opposite. You don't have some other person to just fix everything, which is why humans have to work at it, which is ironic in a sense, because notice that religious people, like everyone else, wants to feel to play some role. It's like they're looking for something to do. They're looking for a purpose, for a meaning. So in other words, they want to make a difference. However, under the theistic systems traditionally, you have no purpose because God is just going to do it. So there's actually more meaning,
Well,
under
they
a
have a
pantheistic or
yeah
atheistic perspective.
yeah I mean they have a purpose. It's to it's to glorify God for eternity. It's to grovel and praise and worship at His feet and be thankful and show gratitude to God forever for saving us from the invisible disease of sin. I don't know. And to judge. I remember. It's to be the judges of the earth. That's our reward. Is we're going to sit in heaven and judge with Christ and judge the nations. So our reward is to judge the world, to judge everyone else's bad behavior. It's
Well, I
insane.
can judge people's bad behavior now.
I wanted to make a point that, remember, okay, about the heaven and hell thing. We can relate to the religious people. We can say, sure, I do believe in heaven and I do believe in hell, and it's this. It's the naturalistic explanation that I just gave. That we can relate to them. We can say, it's not in some transcendent heavenly realm. It's not in some underworld. It's not in the earth. It's not in some other dimension. Okay, but there is a heaven and hell. Like almost every theme in Western religions, in conventional traditional religions, it actually exists on a real level, on a practical real level. Every single theme. And so, like, what Peter tries to do is he tries to give a reinterpretation of it and relate to people and meet them where they're at, and sort of let them keep their traditions and give them a sort of a nuanced, sort of a different perspective on it. And I could do the same thing when I speak to them, but what I'm trying to create is something that just literally does away with all that and starts over and starts from scratch, starts fresh, and and can revolutionize the world if we embrace it. If we can embrace the sanctity of life and the divine nature within. That's the point.
And I really do need to get going. So we'll need to end this, but
Sure, man.
this has been a really good talk, and I'm really glad we talked about this stuff because I think we made some very important points, and I think we clarified the difference between like a pantheistic worldview and how traditionally religious people. We talked about meaning, we talked about purpose, we talked about we talk about all this great stuff, and this stuff is highly interesting and rather unique because I don't like just the fantasy that's nonsense that people usually promote. And sure, my other friends are focusing on reality, but they're focusing on things which they can't even do anything about, and they're just and so I'm trying to find what can I do that is practical, and I think
you're already doing it by being a vegan. You're already doing it.
Yeah.
With your podcast, you're already doing it by giving me a voice, by giving me a platform to speak. You're doing it. And use this. We can as a tool, and we can find specific topics and stuff we can do weekly, and it can be very positive and enlightening to others. And that's the whole podcast. Chandler's fantasy.
Yeah, really. And see, I feel like just giving
the liberation of Chandler.
Yeah, but I feel like just by giving people, through the podcast, the hangout stuff, giving people a chance to speak their mind, I'm like providing one of the very few uncensored media outlets there are. Because if you listen to radio or television, everybody's a paid person. They're censored in what they can and can't say, and I won't have any of that. People can say exactly what they think, and then I can disagree with them after they've said.
I mean, civil discourse. Honesty. Transparency. And civil discourse. I mean, it's like the most important thing, man. And what you're talking about is an alternative media, essentially, is without all the spin, without all the political bias, without all the political agendas. I mean, you and I both know politics. It's bullshit. Like it literally, it's an archaic system that needs to end. That needs to die. It needs to it's outlived its usefulness, and it doesn't work anymore because of
Yeah.
the monetary system and how people buy their way in and out. So what we
Exactly.
need
And while
is
everybody else, yeah, while everybody else is trying to pick their side of Democrat and Republican or whatever,
oh yeah,
everyone knows whose side I am on, the side of life, you know? And it's just, duh. It's like,
that's great, man. That was awesome.
yeah, I guess that's a good note to end with it.
Said
So,
it.
yeah, I got to end the broadcast, take a shower, and get to bed, you know? So,
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, man. Thanks.
okay.
That was awesome.